From the Detroit Free Press, I'm Robin Chan with today's voice briefing. It's Monday, September 4th, 2023.
I'm Clara Hendrickson for the Detroit Free Press. Big questions hover over the policy goals Governor Gretchen Whitmer proposed in a speech delivered the week before state lawmakers returned to Lansing from their summer recess. Dubbed the What's Next address, Whitmer laid out her fall agenda, which included calls for lawmakers to pass legislation on paid family and medical leave and clean energy. Democratic lawmakers have already introduced bills on both those fronts, and it's unclear whether Whitmer supports the specific details put forward by lawmakers, such as offering workers 15 weeks of paid leave or requiring a 100% clean energy standard by 2035. Democratic legislative leaders said deliberations on the scope of their proposals are subject to ongoing deliberations. Checking off the items on Whitmer's wish list before the end of the year could be a challenge for Democrats, who temporarily could lose their majority in the state house if two state representatives win their mayoral races.
This is Phoebe Wall-Howard, an automotive reporter at the Detroit Free Press. As we come through the Labor Day holiday weekend, UAW President Shawn Fain has characterized the talks with Ford, Stellantis, and General Motors as grim. He used profanity and said members are angry by what appears to be lack of effort by the automakers for this 4-year contract. A strike deadline looms. The Detroit Free Press looks at CEO compensation packages as well as worker compensation packages, offers comment and insight on what's really happening, and details such as the fact that the Toyota CEO has received 1/3 the compensation package of the Detroit 3 executives, despite building and selling the most vehicles globally. Little details. Go to freep.com for more.
For the Detroit Free Press Autos team, I'm Jamie LaRoe. Wall Street analysts are weighing in on the UAW and Detroit automakers contract talks and say some of the union's demands are not economically feasible for the companies. If the car makers grant the union's demands, the added costs could be passed on to consumers in the form of higher new car prices, especially for electric vehicles. But as the union's September 14th contract deadline nears, a possible strike looms larger. And a strike is a, quote, potential nightmare situation for GM and Ford, unquote, since both are in the early stages of a transition to an all-EV future, said Dan Ives, an analyst at Wedbush Securities. Ives said he was in Detroit last week and sensed a very nervous time across the industry. Morningstar auto analyst David Winston said an hourly wage increase is doable, but other UAW demands are not feasible, especially a shortened work week, continuing to pay workers if plants are closed, and reopening pension plans and retiree health care. But the UAW has noted the car makers have collectively made $21 billion in the first half of this year and can afford to give back some of the union's previous concessions. For more on this story, check out thefreep.com.
I'm Andrew Burkle with the Free Press Sports Department. The opening week of college football is now behind us, and the most anticipated Detroit Lions season in perhaps my entire life is just days away. Sure, fans have been thinking about this game for months, but there's just something different when the calendar flips over and suddenly the Lions are playing this week. You could make a case this will be the biggest stage the Lions have been on this decade. The Lions have made the playoffs a couple times over the last 25 years or so, but usually the expectations are low, and the attention across the country is divided amongst the bigger matchups. But this time, it's different. The biggest sport in the country, far and away. The first game of the season, prime time, the only game of the day against the freaking defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. What more could you ask for? Now, technically, there's no specific criteria for being put in this game, but in a roundabout way, the Lions have earned this moment. The franchise, known for making silly hires and failing to create a culture, has done the exact opposite. By hiring Dan Campbell, the Lions have a brand now that isn't the same old Lions. Hard-nosed, tough players who perhaps toe the line of overly competitive. Yeah, it's safe to say Dan Campbell has a type. But when the Lions went into Green Bay last year in Week 18, with technically nothing to play for besides ruining the Packers' season, they proved to the league, we're built different. The outside circumstances literally do not faze them. If they did, the Lions would have folded like a cheap suit against the Packers. But they didn't. And now they've earned this moment, a chance to test themselves against the league's measuring stick. For better or worse, the Lions are on the biggest stage. Now's their time to show this really isn't the same old Lions.
Find more from the Detroit Free Press by visiting freep.com. That's FREEP.com. Thanks for listening, and you'll hear more from us tomorrow.